In interest of time, let's get this thing started. First and foremost, welcome everybody. Welcome to the seventh webinar. Welcome to the seventh webinar in our series dedicated to the future of work, brought to you by Service Rocket. My name is Sam Miller, and on behalf of my fellow host and friend Rodriguez Luna, thank you for joining. With that said, let's have some fun while we learn about how to invest in collaboration that actually works. So in this webinar, we will discuss what the difference between communication and collaboration is, what a solid framework for a collaboration infrastructure actually looks like, common challenges and solutions regarding collaboration, and collaboration's tool that will help your organization thrive in the future of work. To get the opening credits out the way, Service Rocket is a leading tech-enabled services company that accelerates the growth of software companies and their customers. By maximizing software adoption and return on investment, Service Rocket provides an ecosystem of capabilities that span software implementation, retention, and expansion. As a trusted partner to Atlassian, Meta, Digital AI, NetSuite, by Oracle, Moreau, and companies around the world, Service Rocket is headquartered in Palo Alto, California. Our diverse workforce of Rocketeers in Australia, Canada, Chile, India, Malaysia, Philippines, UK, and the US consistently think team and delight the customer. Just a little bit about me. I'm the product marketing manager here at Service Rocket. I specialize in uncovering customer needs and pain points to create products, services that meet those needs and actually create value for customers. Helping companies work together and be more collaborative with technology, that's really my favorite thing to do. If you want to connect with me, on the top right, you see my QR code for my LinkedIn account. And let's just introduce Alexa, our guest speaker. Please give a warm future work welcome to our guest speaker, Alexa. Alexa is a playful and practical communication and collaboration skills consultant with a master's degree in communications and 10+ year career in sales, customer success, workplace strategy, people analytics, and product marketing for businesses in the US and in Europe. Her clients range from startups and small businesses to global enterprises, but regardless of company size, her motivation is always to help people and teams unlock their potential to connect better with colleagues and customers, which she does through tailored programs that combine advisory services, interactive workshops, and on-the-job training. Prior to her own consulting business, she had a door-to-door sales job, which is boot camp in communications and influence, for a year and a half while finishing her master's degree. Congratulations, master's degree. All right. She opened and ran a co-working space in the early days of pre-rework of co-working, and most recently, she ran customer success for Humanize, an MIT spinoff software analytics company that measures and advises on best practices in social science and effective collaboration in Fortune 100 companies. That was a good intro, right?
I know, it was so weird to be sitting and introducing, but thank you.
I know I've read this multiple times, but each time I do, I become more and more impressed, to be perfectly honest with you. Welcome to Future of Work webinar, Alexa, and say hello to your adoring fans.
Thank you. I also must say that I like that you're wearing the same shirt as your headshot.
Oh, appreciate it.
Very well coordinated.
Oh yeah.
No, but really, thank you. It's exciting to be here and it's a cool opportunity. So hope it's helpful for people.
So get us started. How do you think about working with companies related to their collaboration infrastructure?
Yeah, well, I guess this slide really tees me up, because I think before we jump into the collaboration infrastructure, it's really important to start thinking about what the difference is between communication and collaboration, because often those two terms get conflated, but they are different. So maybe before we jump into infrastructure, we can first talk about the terms, and really communication goes into collaboration. Oh, I think it's a different slide that we need to go to.
Oh, excuse me.
What is communication slide?
I don't know why that changed in order.
Uh-oh. Okay, there it is.
Clear now. That was strange.
Now everyone knows what's coming.
I know, right?
Surprise, I'm going to talk about collaboration next. Okay, so first, I just want to talk about what communication is. And I know it might sound really basic, but it's important to unpack because we communicate all the time, right? And a lot of the time, just like we might eat every day, but we're not necessarily trained in nutrition, and communication is sort of the same way. So we talk, and sometimes we think, hey, we're communicating, but really if you think about all that goes into communication, which is the transfer of information and messages from one to another, and it could be one-to-one or it could be one-to-many. But really in this example, we've got Sam and me. So let's say Sam is trying to communicate something to me, right? So he's coming to this interaction with all of his emotions in the current situation, his values, which are like deeper rooted worldviews, right? Expectations of what he's going to get out of this interaction when he's trying to communicate with me, expectations about how I might react, and also like belief systems, right? So when we go to communicate, we have all of those things influencing us. And you can see I also have those on my side, right? So when Sam wants to send a message to me, and I should clarify, a message can be anything, it's not just a text message, right? It could be something that's communicated in words, or it also could be something that's communicated in body language, right? He is encoding it. He's choosing how to encode that message. So he's referencing his belief systems, his values, and he's deciding how he wants to communicate something. You can click next, Sam. So that can be a verbal message, right? That has content, but then in any message, there's so much that's nonverbal. So in this, 92% of what we communicate is nonverbal. So nonverbal in the traditional sense, as we've, for generations practiced it, is physical body language, things like smiling, eye contact, forward lean, things like that. Also tone. So as I'm communicating a lot that I'm engaged, I'm leaning forward. You can hear the excitement in my voice. But what's really interesting to think about is when we're not face-to-face or in person, we still have these nonverbal communication, like ways of communicating. They've just changed in virtual environments. So I want to make sure that that's really clear at the off the bat. That's how it says, because we, in a lot of ways, have not updated our understanding of, let's call it like digital body language. So things like how quickly or slowly do you respond to a message? What tool choice do you use to actually send a message? So right now we're communicating to all of you over a webinar. That's communicating something different than had we sent this in an email or given someone a call and said, hey, I want to tell you about communication. Or if I went to your door and knocked on your door and said, hey, I have a really important message for you. So the medium, or the medium is the message, right? The medium that we choose to communicate something in says a lot about what, it says a lot, right? And also things like emojis. Do you use 1 exclamation point or 3 exclamation points? All of those things have these like meta ways that we're encoding. And then you see the cycle. So Sam says something to me, I hear it, I see it, and then I decode it based on all of my emotions, values, expectations, beliefs, which I'm fairly certain we have some things that are different about us. So, and especially if we're coming from different generations, different cultures, different work environments, different frames of reference, there are so many opportunities for us to misinterpret or make assumptions about what the other person, how the other person might receive my message, and also, basically how they'll interpret it. And then that cycle continues. So when I react, you then decode my reaction, and it continues. So there are a lot of areas here to unpack, and we'll get to that later, but the main message is it's the transfer and receipt of communication, and the skills of communication are knowing what tools to use to communicate a message, being able to empathize with the other party and frame your message in a way that they're most likely, given their perspective, to receive it in the way that you intend for them to receive it. So that's what communication is. Well, in
So then
summary.
what's collaboration?
Wow, thanks for teeing me up. So if communication is a skill set that is used in collaboration, but in this case, collaboration is really coordinated communication in pursuit of a goal. So that one, there Sam's communicating with each one of us individually in this team. Let's imagine it's a team. Collaboration is, if you want to click next, all of us communicating together in order to accomplish something. Now, in collaboration, it's really important to understand what the goal is that you're trying to achieve, because different types of collaboration can have different outputs. So when we talk about like concepts in social science around collaboration, this example where all four of us are kind of evenly talking with everyone else, that's a really cohesive structure. So that's been correlated to things like really high job satisfaction, trust, engagement. If we're all talking to everyone else on a team on a regular basis, then it's likely that we're speaking the same language, so to speak. And that can really help if you're trying to be really efficient, if you want to kind of produce things with low error quickly. That's great if you have really even collaboration. But if your goal is to be really creative or innovative and come up with ideas that have never been done before, then maybe your collaboration might look different, right? So maybe you actually would want to be exposed to people that you don't talk to on a regular basis. You want to get a lot of new perspectives that could inspire you. So have a lot of kind of maybe outside of your core team, want to interact across departments, because that's been proven to really correlate with things like innovation and creativity. So collaboration, again, is this coordinated communication around a goal. And it acknowledges also the fact that the output of a whole is greater than the sum of its individual parts. So that's also really important. Oh, go ahead.
No, I said I like that. I've heard that that's what teamwork is. I really like that.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds simple, but if you think about, my individual needs, those might not always be aligned with what your individual needs are. However, if we need to come together in a coordinated way, we need to make sure that we're accommodating those needs in a way that's going to work for the group. So, right. So if I really want to send all of my emails really early in the morning so that I can go and do a workout and then take my meetings in the afternoon, that's great, but not if other people on my team need more synchronous or real-time communication in the morning, right? So collaboration really does require coordination. And that is where we start to get into needing something like infrastructure to make sure that communication, not only do we communicate effectively on a one-to-one basis, but that we communicate effectively in alignment towards a goal.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's actually really insightful, Alexa. Yeah, go there. So when it's put in front of your eyes like that, it actually really makes a lot of sense, especially in the work environment. Now that we have those concepts established, we can transition to a framework to help leaders think through structure for their team's collaboration. So doing research on this for this webinar topic, we found a traditional definition of what collaboration infrastructure is that comes from the Project Management Institute. Collaboration infrastructure is the set of tools, techniques, and principles that provide the foundation for effective transfer of information between people. Tools include groupware, email, project management software, fax, phone, teleconferencing systems, document management systems, and word processors. Now, in your professional opinion, Alexa, what do you think of this definition? Because honestly, personally, it seems a little outdated.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, it's not bad. I think it's technically accurate, but obviously when it references fax before it even mentions phone, then I can tell it's a bit outdated.
What's a groupware? I don't know.
Yeah. Word processors, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not explicitly acknowledging the importance of starting with the why. So really looking at, this is like, okay, you've got tools and now you have to learn how to use those tools and have those techniques. That's true. But again, kind of going back to what I was talking about with collaboration, you really need to, you can't build an infrastructure for your collaboration until you really know where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. And I think the best analogy that I can use is scaffolding for a house. So if you're going to be building or renovating a house, you can't build the scaffolding until you know what kind of house you want to build, right? And then the scaffolding is the thing that's there in place to make sure that it happens according to plan. And so I guess that, yeah, this would be my updated definition. So of course, you need to know, you need to consider the tools that are going to be most effective for accomplishing what you're trying to do. And tools can be, I know we'll talk in this webinar probably more about the like kind of virtual collaboration tools, but tools can also be things like the physical office space. And I think a lot of companies, especially right now, are not thinking of your physical office as equal to maybe your internal social network or something, but really all of them are different tools that can enable different types of communication and different ways of coming together. So they can be really powerful, but if you don't know how to use those tools, both from like a technical standpoint, right? You have to actually know how to post a message and reply, but also have those skills that I mentioned earlier related to communication and kind of future-proof communication skills. Like how do you communicate a message in a way that someone will actually hear it and be in a place where they can kind of interpret it effectively. Things like that are also really important. And also you need process and norms to make sure, like I was talking about earlier with collaboration, that everything comes together and that people use those tools in the way that's going to actually work well. Because you can have a tool, but if you don't know how to use it and you don't understand how it impacts other people, I think we all have a lot of examples of times when tools have been really inefficient. We had maybe 20 back and forths on email when we could have just picked up the phone, right? That's a process and norm thing, but it's also skills, right? So we need training. And another key part of this is measurement and reinforcement, because you don't just build collaboration infrastructure up, and then let it loose and never address it again. It's a constantly evolving thing as the needs of your business, as the skills of your people change. You need to be updating those norms and updating maybe the tools and continuing to train and retrain. So you need, as part of your process, a way to measure it. But yeah, and I think an analogy here could be, if I have a goal, this is maybe a really basic analogy, but if I have a goal of like building muscle and getting stronger, right? I obviously need tools in order to do that. The tool could be my body, I already have that. But it could also be like a mat. It could be weights. It could be a gym membership. That's a tool, right? All of these things are tools. I could get a Fitbit. I could have like some kind of nutrition app. Then I need to have some kind of process and norms in order to keep myself accountable. I need to say, okay, I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to do these workouts. And if I don't do them, my friend is going to text me and shame me. And that's my built-in accountability, right? And I'm going to weigh myself. I know this is like, is it from experience? I don't know. And then I'm going to weigh myself. I'm going to see if I'm on track, but I also need to have the skills to know how to use these things. I need to understand what it means. Why am I tracking my heart rate? What does that mean? I need to be informed so I can be empowered to make my own choices in this, as well as obviously knowing how to operate equipment. So again, I can't make those decisions until I know where I want to go, but everything has to come together and you can't just have one. If you just have the tool, people won't use it effectively. And I think a lot of people are kind of giving up on tools too quickly because they say, oh, I applied all of the way that I used to take an in-person meeting to the virtual environment and it's frustrating and I don't like it. So then it doesn't work. Instead of saying, what are new processes and norms and skills that we need to develop in order to make the most of this.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And one thing I want to highlight, based upon what you just said, is one aspect of this definition is that it's not a linear process, meaning you go through one step at a time and then you're done. It's an iterative process. It must be revisited and reinforced time and time again. And to help with the visualization of what we were talking about, this is a framework for after you're selecting your goals to your technology stack. Hat tip to Alexa. You select your technology tools to invest in as a company, and hope employees take to it like water, right? No, not really, unfortunately. This is what happens in most companies. The tool that was carefully chosen slowly dies of obscurity after a big initial launch and promotion, and the operations and IT team feel like they wasted their time and money because no one uses the tool. What needs to happen is that the time and resources are spent training employees on how to use the tool and the processes that the tools help to improve. With those trainings in place, leadership needs to establish the new working norms. Like an example, using Workplace for Meta for all internal communications instead of email. You need to have leaders say, if someone's going to respond, say, I'm not going to respond to you through email, and talk to me about it through Workplace. And it's, like I said, it's just as important, as Alexa said, it's just as important to measure how the team is adopting the new working norms while reinforcing the way they're working. So like I just said, if some internal team member sends an email to leadership has to respond to the email saying that they were to respond through Workplace, and that these type of communications should only be held through Workplace. It's just really key to driving the behaviors and ensuring that the change management is successful. Over time, with frequent measurements and reinforcement, the change will stick, and the value that the tools are promised will actually be realized, ultimately leading to driving new innovations and, more importantly, value to the business. Make sense?
Makes sense to me.
All right. So, okay, now that we have all the base knowledge in place, I'm sure you're asking, Sam, why does all this information matter? Well, I'll tell you, it actually matters a lot. According to a Deloitte research study, 94% of companies cite agility and collaboration as central to their company's growth. 91% do not believe that their organizations have a very effective infrastructure for sharing and collaboration. And that means 9% do, out of all the companies in a Deloitte study. There's $9.3 billion with a B dollars of additional value up for grabs if companies make the most of opportunities to collaborate more. And most importantly, on the bottom, companies with a high collaborative culture are 5 times more likely to be successful and high performing. Now you notice on the left, a giant circle. You'll see that's my first word cloud, my future word cloud. I'm pretty proud of it. Thank you. I didn't practice at all. But other than marveling at my typing ability, you'll notice that the words that fill in the cloud are centered around collaboration. The more collaborative you are as a company, the more you're able to boost engagement, learn from one another, build trust and respect, become better at problem solving, and drive innovation amongst others. Sounds kind of familiar, right? Now, moving forward, let's touch upon common challenges and solutions regarding collaboration. These challenges will seem familiar to everyone, and we found a few solutions to help ease the pain for everyone. So for instance, to start, internal collaboration communication problems don't cause damage to your company in one big swoop. This is what makes it hard to detect the consequences because it works and it happens in domino effect, meaning one challenge goes on top of one another, and next thing you know, everything's gone awry. So for instance, to start us off, tool selection. Many of the issues related to remote workforce management can be resolved with the right tools. However, the tools themselves can create an issue. If they're hard to learn, or if they're not intuitive, they can end up costing you more than you save. If you have a selection of very different tools for different functions, they can be hard to manage, not to mention expensive. Time zone, this is something that we deal with on a regular basis for a global team. There's less opportunity for real-time communications with different teams and team members in different time zones. Being respectful of your remote team members' office hours may equate to less synchronous communication. Meeting at inconvenient hours. With such a gap between central time, certain time zones, it can be difficult to host meetings at a time that works for everyone. For example, when it's 8 a.m. in Boston, it's already 10 p.m. in Australia. Lack of transparency. A lack of information and resources cause productivity to suffer, inspire frustration among employees, and lead to poor employee morale. Employees need to know what's going on in the company and understand the reasons behind major decisions. If leadership does not, leadership will lose legitimacy little by little, and the trust they have built with their team will be broken. Alexa, you want to talk about misunderstandings?
Yeah, and also just quickly on the information silos as well. It's obviously an issue, like you mentioned, with leadership and kind of having access to organizational objectives, but it also can be a real issue like with peers as well, right? Getting information of like what are other teams working on, especially in virtual environments, if you don't have transparency across teams, or even informal exposure to kind of the context of what's going on just in that informal world. People, pick up, if you think about the traditional office environment, sometimes you would pick stuff up at the water cooler. You don't have those opportunities in virtual environments, or I don't know, some companies are cooler, maybe it's the beer tap or but
cooler. I haven't heard that term in a while. In New England, Boston, where I'm from, it's the bubbler.
Oh, okay.
I remember that.
But yeah, and then misunderstandings, of course. I mean, this is really broad. We put in generational cultural personality. If you think about, all the times, I really like, if you just think back to some of the tension you've experienced at work and how much time that costs. Misunderstandings cost companies so much money, like both, when it's just a harmless misunderstanding, but maybe it leads to having to redo something or the wrong information getting passed, and then someone works on something totally different. There's that, but then there's also actual conflict, right? And basically people misunderstanding each other and therefore getting frustrated or annoyed, and that building over time. And you see that a lot in cross-generational communication when you're coming from different belief systems, different norms. But when you come back to the idea, what I was talking about in communication, where, I think like the boomer generation might use ... in a different way than Gen Zs, right? So the way, or, if I use an emoji, someone else might think that that's really unprofessional. So things like that, people apply a lot of assumptions. Same with cultural, intercultural. I know Service Rocket has a lot of different locations around the world. I've also worked with a lot of global teams, and there's so many cultural misunderstandings that can happen, and also personality differences. The obvious ones are things like introverts and extroverts. People can build up resentment really easily, right? And that causes a lot of problems. Then inefficient tool usage. I think both of us have alluded to this already, but things like screen fatigue, right? Or sending a bunch of emails when it could have been a quick call, or you getting interrupted constantly by pings from a chat tool. When people don't know how to use their tools efficiently, it can really cost you a bunch of time and also lead to a lot of frustration as well. And then building social connections virtually. With some of my clients, I've heard that it's really hard. I think there's a lot of acknowledgement now in most professional environments that informal connection is important. And even if you're not always talking about work, that still is really powerful for building a foundation of trust, that then when you need that foundation for a work application, it's already there, right? But it is important to understand, to be able to connect with your colleagues and debrief and have those little chats that builds up over time, both with your immediate team and also, like I mentioned before, if you're trying to encourage innovation, broader organizational context and awareness, the ability to connect with people that otherwise you would never have any formal need to talk to in a company. You never know where your next insight might come from. But also, especially when you're integrating new employees, for example, like if anyone has joined a company in a remote setting that wasn't necessarily set up to incentivize social connection, it can be really difficult when you don't, again, when you don't have the water cooler. So that's another challenge that a lot of companies are facing. I think trying to build that, culture, team camaraderie, sense of connectedness, not just in a formal work way. And I also wanted to acknowledge unconscious proximity bias, because this is one that comes up particularly in hybrid work environments. There's, a concept in social science that we tend to prefer people that we are physically or virtually closer to. So you see this, like there have been a lot of studies in bias in management where if someone sits next to you on a daily basis, you're just more likely to think of them for opportunities. And that can become even more dangerous if you start to have kind of a blended or hybrid approach, because if you're not really thoughtful and conscious about it, it can lead to unconscious bias, right? People can favor people without even realizing it, both as managers, but also as peers. And again, it doesn't always have to be physical, it could be virtual. If I have a one-on-one with someone on a regular basis, I'm probably more likely to think of them as the first person than I would be, if I didn't interact with them much or only a chat here and there.
So those are great. Let's talk about some of the solutions.
Sure. So I'll keep going and then I'll hand it off to you, Sam. But just so managing everyone's expectations, you're not going to hear me talk the whole time. Yeah, I want to just preface this by saying I could talk about this for hours for each one, obviously. So these are going to be kind of broad solutions, but just like some tips to think about, right? And there are also kind of, I'm coming from more of a process, norms, training perspective. There are also a lot of tools that can help with these things as well. Or, in combination, they can provide a solution. But on the proximity bias thing, first is just awareness, because as we said, unconscious proximity bias, making it more conscious. So things like training and like bias training can be really helpful, just to bring awareness to things so that people can be more explicit and conscious about how you overcorrect. So if you are a manager and you go into an office and you happen to see the same colleague on a regular basis, you can then say, when was the last time that I actually interacted with my other direct report who never comes into the office, and schedule even more virtual time with them. So just being aware and overcorrecting for when you kind of have more natural exposure, maybe in an informal way. Incentivizing informal connection. This is another sort of broad stroke solution to building social connection. It also can be a solution for information silos, but really building in this infrastructure, thinking about process and incentives to help people connect. Because if people feel like informal connection building is going to negatively impact their KPIs, then they'll be less likely to do it. If it's like, oh, I need to be focusing, I don't have time for this chit chat because the company has not said that it's important and has not created the virtual or physical space in order to do it, then you'll always feel like it's taking away from your day-to-day work. When in reality, it's actually highly productive, because if you, in this informal connection building, get even one piece of information that can help you do your job better, it's worth it in most cases. So there are lots of ways to do this. I know in some of the tools that Service Rocket works with, there are a lot of ways to kind of have informal spaces for discussion that it's not all work related. You can do some like employee matching for virtual coffees if you're all remote or hybrid in some way. Having, building into your meetings a standard extra few minutes at the beginning and end to kind of just chit chat, so it doesn't feel like you're eating up time in the meeting. All of those things can be really helpful.
one example that comes to my mind immediately is every Friday we have Hookah Troopa, where everyone on my team just hangs out. We play virtual games. We talk about what's coming up for this week, or this weekend, what we've been working on, just to catch up. So it's not structured conversations.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I do think this can be a challenge for some people, especially if you have different personality types on your team. And the art here is making it genuine, like basically creating space for people to connect, but not forcing it. Because the second you start to force it and say, hey, we're going to have organized fun and you're all going to love it, people often completely disengage. But if you can tap into and create enough different environments for people to engage in a way that feels genuine to them, then that's what really makes this more successful. So it's not just having one happy hour and saying, great, I did it. It's about a multi-pronged approach that acknowledges all of these generational, cultural, and personality differences, right?
Yeah. Last one's educate and future-proof.
Right. Yeah, I'm going up the chain. So this one, educate and future-proof communication skills. Future-proof communication skills, again, is referencing what I talked about at that very beginning around one, some of the social science concepts that are worth considering when it comes to kind of group coordination. So that's more of an awareness thing. And then the skills part is things like, yeah, what is digital body language? What does that mean? What are the ways that someone could interpret it if I respond too quickly to an email? We have this idea that responding really quickly means it's like great and that's the best, but you can really misinterpret that. It could be like, oh, this person didn't even think about my message at all, especially if it has typos in it, right? So some of these things are basic communication skills. They're not necessarily like future of work communication skills. But if you think about how many years our society has had to practice the more traditional kind of body language, and then how recent all of this evolution of technology is that we've just had to adopt and run with. If we really invest in teaching people how you communicate effectively with these tools, how to choose the right tool to send what kind of message, that can be really helpful, along with things like cultural awareness, cross-generational communication, things like that.
Makes sense. And to continue what we're talking about for solutions, I was talking about to start just tool integrations. So the more your software tools integrate with one another, the more collaborative your team will be. It simplifies decision making by removing the need to move between programs, also known as context switching. It gives you more reliable data. It increases your team's productivity and overall improves your data security. For asynchronous work, instead of mandating that teams work together at specific hours, enable your team to work offline to fit their schedules. Like example, have a brainstorming session asynchronously by having team members provide their inputs, edits, thoughts, ideas during times that fit their individual work schedules. That way, everyone feels heard and feels like they were able to contribute to a project or initiative. Record and share meetings for remote team members so that no one is left behind. That way, so let's say someone took a day off or they were sick. If they want to find out what's going on, they can jump back in and catch back up really quickly.
I really like voice notes too.
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah.
Good point. Schedule leadership updates and formalize cross-team connection. Scheduled leadership updates help foster transparency and build trust between leadership and employees. Leaders are tasked with looking forward and planning for the future by gathering as much information as possible in the market, new technologies and trends to make the best decisions on how to manage the company going forward. What most aren't privy to are the conversations and reasoning behind the choices leadership makes. By having regularly scheduled leadership updates, the CEO updates or company all hands, individual contributors and people managers are given insight into what went into the decisions that have been made, which in turn fosters transparency and builds trust. Full circle. Now, the one I want to, there was also cross-team collaboration. So even before the pandemic, companies were challenged to break down information silos. One hand didn't know what the other one was doing. That's only been exacerbated with the proliferation of dispersed or hybrid teams. Setting up regularly scheduled cross-team meetings enables visibility into the work that other teams are doing, allows everyone to celebrate wins, and gives the opportunity to ask questions of teammates that you don't normally get to interact with. Now, the next one I want to bring attention is group communication and norms. Every message does not need to be sent to all employees. We've all received emails that are sent to at everyone when it really only pertains to a subsector of employees. And after a while, what ends up happening? People stop reading the important company updates because they see it as a waste of time. The sequence of events often leads to employees' resignation and broader issues with employee retention in your company. The next slide, we have a framework that we can actually use to align your team on group communication norms for a hybrid or fully remote environment. Oh, here we go. So people managers and the organization itself should provide training to team members on best practices when collaborating with team members or other stakeholders in the organization. On top of what you see, on the top, you will see the communications tools that are most commonly used, chat, post, video calls, and email. And on the left, there are variables that you should think about per type of communications tool. So asynchronous, the level of urgency, synchronous and asynchronous, the level of urgency, how complex the message is, identifying what each type of communication is best used for, and the audience that you're sending the message to. Now, we could talk through each of these ad nauseum, but in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on complexity, and best use for words. Yeah, I know, right? Because explaining those rows to everyone will help relieve these headaches. So complexity. Complexity. So there, when it comes to chat, you want to make sure that the messages are they're not super complex. They're short messages that don't require a lot of context. They're best used for reminders, quick questions, urgent requests, or a casual conversation. For posts, they're medium complexity. They need a little bit more context, which you have the opportunity to fill in with a post. And it's really a great way to start a conversation between one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. For video calls, they have high complexity, which is why you want to have that conversation with someone, because they need that context to get a full understanding of what you're talking about. And then you can have those with your check-ins with check-ins, one-on-ones, team meetings, brainstorms and workshops, and then collaborative syncs. An email, which is that everyone knows that it's been used forever, the old guard. The complexity is medium in terms of length. They do need context. What ends up happening is you'll get an email chain where it's got 50 emails in it, and you're too busy scrolling back and forth trying to see who said what and when. It just becomes a mess. And it's best used for, honestly, communicating with clients or vendors and third parties. Does that make sense to you, Alexa? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I really like having this grid. And I think, you can get even more meta, pun sort of intended, but also have, norms around enforcing this, because obviously this is a lot to remember and it's hard to keep in your mind. And then in your day-to-day, you're going and you're working. So I think there are a couple things that you can do, as much as you can embed this stuff into the tool itself. So maybe you have some kind of instruction, or in your meeting invites, you have instruction for what a meeting should be used for. Like, hey, is this like this? Is this like this? Right. Anyway, creating ways to embed this in as constant reminders for people is one. And also setting a tone that you can make it playful and fun to remind people, not in a confrontational way, but in a, oh, hey, next time this would actually be better for a post than a chat, right? And I think that this is a really good guide, but of course, every company or team could come up with their own slightly tweaked version based on the type of work that they're doing. But it's really nice to have this as a reference point, and it's really cool that you have it. Yeah.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth. The only thing I would add to that is, when it comes to setting these norms, it has to come from the top down. Because once leadership explains it, they set those norms, they follow through with it, and they reinforce it, that's when it really sticks.
As long as they're open to feedback from the bottom up as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So let's transition to the software tools that will help your organization thrive in the future of work. So up first is Workplace from Meta. It's the only one business collaboration platform that enables collaboration through a familiar and easy to use interface. If you've ever had a Facebook account, you can pick up Workplace and run with it. With features like chat, video calls, groups, posts, no matter who you are collaborating with, regardless of the time zone, the right features to get your message across are available within a few clicks of the mouse. So here at Service Rocket, with our workplace customers and ourselves, Workplace is where work happens. When I log into work for the day, I take my Workplace account off Do Not Disturb, and I greet my team with a funny GIF, or at the very least, a good morning in the group chat. As my day progresses, Workplace is woven into most of it due to the ecosystem that directly integrates other software tools into Workplace. For instance, the integration with Zoom allows our formalized cross-team connections, company all hands, and CEO updates to be recorded and automatically live streamed to specific groups in Workplace. So that, again, if anyone was sick or had a day off or missed a meeting, it'd be readily available for all to pick up and watch quickly and easily. Our leadership team models transparency by live streaming important updates. Our CEO, Rob, seen here drinking nice coffee, he records live videos every Friday into his CEO update group, which enables him to personally connect with each employee when they have time to view the message asynchronously. He talks about company initiatives, large and small wins, Rocketeer anniversaries, birthdays, as well as personal topics like his son's football team record, or the results of him running triathlons. Yeah, I know. He's the CEO of a company. He runs triathlons, a little bit overachiever, but it's cool because Rob's the man. And then you'll see on the right, we have our formalized cross-team connections. This is an example of a screenshot of a OKR meeting, which we have every Mondays, where we talk about what where we are in relation to our goals, what we are planning for the next week, for this upcoming week. Where we talk about that with everyone, so we get an opportunity to find out what the team is all working on, and it also gives us a great opportunity to ask questions and to find out more information that we wouldn't necessarily have, because not everyone in this meeting we normally talk to on a regular basis. So the next one is Moreau. So Moreau is an online collaborative whiteboard platform that enables distributed teams to work effectively together from brainstorming with digital sticky notes to planning and managing agile workflows. Mural has all the features and templates you need to go from ideation to execution when it comes to building new products or company initiatives, what have you. So to start this, to help you with asynchronous work and collaborative tools, this is an example of a retrospective that was done in 2021. So you don't have anything recent, you don't have to worry about losing any information. But this is a perfect opportunity for us to actually get into it. So this is the template that you can find inside of Moreau. You can search for any different types of template there. This wants to load. Oh, there we go. So we have meetings and workshops, brainstorming, ideation, agile workflows, research and design, strategy and planning, which are important for all leadership teams, where this was the retrospective board. So you can drop it right into here. And then at any given time, you can drag a sticky note, say, this is easy for anybody to use. You can point to, you want to bring it up to a specific fact, you can have the arrows. You can, let's see, you can add a title to this board quickly and easily, which you've seen right there. Drag it over, add a title to this board. It's very quick, very simple, very intuitive tool, and it enables everyone to work asynchronously to solve their problems, to get moving forward with whatever project they're working on. That's Moreau. And the next one I want to show you guys is Jira software. So Jira is the #1 software development tool used by agile teams. What's great about Jira is that it's so versatile. It's known for being used by software development teams, but it can be used for general project management. So for instance, support teams can use it to keep track of customer issues for being raised or resolved, from being when they raise them to actually when they resolve. The operations teams can use it to keep track of project implementations with customers, and the marketing teams can use it to keep track of campaigns, website development, and for instance, webinar execution tracking. What you see here is a ticket we created to keep track of this webinar. This is ticket 1325, webinar number 7. These are all the different steps, the templated steps that you were talking about a little bit earlier, how we can actually execute on a webinar. And what's cool is, show you an actual example. This is the screenshot that I showed you. So you have all the different steps, create the Zoom event, the copy for the registration page, the emails we're going to send out, we're going to promote it on social media, the graphics, a webinar, actual slides that we use that you've been staring at. And what's great is everyone that's a part of this task has their own individual task itemized and tagged to them so they can know what part they need to execute for us to finish this webinar. And at any given time, let's say this is me. This is the webinar slides. I was working on it. It was in progress. Now it is closed because we have finished this webinar. And I click, hit done.
Not yet.
It closed, and everyone on my team would actually be notified. And at the same time, because we created that service archive, we created the Jira and Workplace connector. I was notified immediately that this ticket was closed. And if we want to, since we normally do our chats and our conversations inside of Workplace, hi, this is Sam demoing the integration. Anyone that's on this ticket will be notified that I just sent that message. They'll be notified that it's closed. And it helps us reduce the context switching and keep moving forward with what you're doing for the workday. How does that sound? Does that work for you, Alexa?
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch these because I've used some of these tools already and some I haven't. And I think it's you demoing this and giving all these examples is just a testament to how much creativity can go into this. And of course, there are templates like you showed for people who are trying to think about how to use tools for themselves. I think it's great to have this kind of inspiration, right? You can always, but there are endless creative ways that you can use tools. And so it's nice to see some examples that have worked, and hopefully also inspiring people to think about other ways that they could be encouraging cross-team collaboration, embedding process into the tool itself, like you mentioned with templates, as much as you can make it as easy as possible to follow the processes and norms as part of the experience. It's almost like user experience for the workplace, right? The better. And it's cool also to hear that so many of these tools are intuitive, because that just leaves a lot more room for all the other skills that people need to learn in order to be communicating and collaborating effectively, when you don't have to spend a lot of time clicking back and forth. Everything's integrated and it's easy to figure out and use. Then it leaves a lot more space for actually doing the work and which is helpful, and also practicing and learning some of those other skills that we don't necessarily think about, because it's a lot easier to put our focus in how do I create a Jira ticket than how do I make sure that this Jira ticket is considering all of the stakeholders involved and how are they all going to know about it, like all of those kind of meta things. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That brings us to the recap, which I will pass it on over to you, Alexi, because this is your checklist. You can finish it up for us.
Sure. So, so yeah, I guess just in summary, as Sam just showed some examples of different tools that can support your goal, but really, again, you have to start with a goal. So if you're starting, obviously, most organizations already have certain tools that they're using. Maybe you're considering changing them. It's that cycle. It's a constantly evolving process. So even if you're already functioning, there's always opportunity for optimization in your collaboration infrastructure. And usually there's at least one of the three, whether it's, your skills or your processes and norms or your tools, that could use some updating or reevaluation. But you have to start with what is your goal and be really clear about that, because just applying these generic templates of, I like to use the kind of return to office stuff, like, should we have a 4-day work week, or should we have the answer, there is no one answer. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how all of these things come together to accomplish a goal. So what's your goal? You need to know what that is. Then you can start to understand, okay, what tools do we need in order to support this, and also make it as efficient and effective as possible. So when you were showing the integration, for example, that's a great example of, okay, I'm going to save so much time, and also it allows for synchronous and asynchronous communication. And then taking inventory of those skills, like what skills do I need to both operate the tools, but also to understand why these processes and norms are important. That's important. You need to educate people so that they're not just blindly told to follow things. They need to really be involved in understanding why and what that matters, and also have the soft skills. I say soft because they are hard skills. They translate to real money, as I hopefully drove home earlier. But what skills do you need in order to make the most use of these tools? And of course, then, yeah, what processes and norms need to be established to keep the group well coordinated in the way that you want to coordinate them. And there are lots of different ways you can do that. Balance all the needs, so those individual needs with the group needs. Where can you make compromises? Where can you really tap into people's motivation and make sure that they're not just being ignored, but give them the processes so that they can all work together well. And again, to measure that progress. So don't just set it up and leave. You need to still be able to understand if it's working, have some kind of KPI or way of checking in to see, hey, are people following this process? And is it still working? Are we hitting the goals that we've said that we want to hit? And if not, where do we need to be reevaluating and evolving in order to do so? So hopefully this is helpful as you start to think about either setting up or adjusting or evolving your collaboration infrastructure.
Ooh, I like the evolving. That was smooth. I like it. Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Alexa, for joining us. This has been fantastic. I've learned so much from you, and you were such a pleasure to work with. Thank you, Peter, for introducing us and making this happen. So it's been great. I want to generally thank everyone for their time and their patience and participation in this webinar. You gave us an hour of your day, and we hope you learned something that you can take with you going forward. With that being said, we got 2 questions that came in, a few questions actually. One from Paul: what are the specific advantages on the use of Moreau versus other tools as a Mural? I'm not very familiar with Mural, to be perfectly honest with you. I've heard of it. I think it's a similar tool to Moreau. Well, one thing I can definitely say that you'll get with Moreau that you won't necessarily get with Mural is their Moreauverse. See if I can pull it up. Their Moreauverse is an actual verse. It's like their universe, all the different templates you can actually use are that other people have created on top of the ones that come with Moreau to actually get in and use the tool. So there's icebreakers, team building, workshops, diagramming, agile workflows, which are created by other people that you can take advantage of. I think Service Rocket uploaded a template. Forgot the name of it off the top of my head. But one of our IT guys uploaded a template. He's on the Moreauverse. He's a Moreauer. Is that even a word? But these are templates that you can use inside of your own Moreau instance to help get started. What's great about it is a lot of them have their explanations of what it actually is, how to use it, how to use a sailboat retrospective. And then there's other related boards that you can, there's the retrospective one we just showed a little bit earlier. Go figure. And then the second question is, when it comes to deciding on the goals first and foremost, how do I involve the whole company to see what will truly work for everyone? Who should get the final say, especially when everyone is so spread out? That's a great question. Alexa, you want to take that one?
That is a great question. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer, but I guess ways that I would think about it are, first off, I don't know that you need to involve the whole company in deciding on what the ultimate goal is. I would say oftentimes leadership or the company values can dictate what that that goal. Because when I talk about goal, it's not about do we want to use this tool or not? It's really about like, okay, we want to hit these targets, and then working backwards from there to say, how do we hit those targets? What do we need to be doing, right? And then, yeah, involving the whole company. I would also say it's important to think about data as well, both subjective and objective data. So obviously, subjective data is, you could do surveys, you could also do workshops. I'm a big fan of kind of involving, even potentially getting some kind of representation from your employee base to represent different parts and different perspectives, and do some kind of collaborative problem solving to bring out the voices in the group, but also having some more objective data. You know, the company that I worked with, Humanize, they do actually like workplace analytics, so they can look at collaboration in organizations, and that can provide, and you can get that from other things like tool usage, things like that. That can also inform a strategy that's kind of like from the ground up, at least, because it's coming from data from the employees, right? So that's just how I would start to think about an answer, but it is a complicated question. I don't think there's one perfect answer to it.
One thing that comes to mind is you can use Moreau and have a workshop where everyone can participate, add in their own 2 cents, and then the leadership team can review what responses, make their selections, and make their final say in what they want to use, or in terms of solution, training, whatever, what have you, for the entire organization. And then this works especially when everyone is so spread out, because it's all asynchronous work. You don't have to have everyone in one specific location, like if you were using a whiteboard to go and put their sticky notes up on the board. Great question, anonymous attendee. I appreciate it. With that, I think we are over time by 3 minutes, and I'd like to say again, thank you, Alexa. Fantastic. Knock it out.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. I will talk to you later. Take care. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and stay collaborative, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.